welcome to Concert Pipeline. I'm Steve Jones. For those of you watching on YouTube, my face is a little red right now. I've been out fishing all day. We'll get to that in just a second, but just want to address the tomato in the room myself before we get into any details. I did not use sunscreen, so probably going to pay the price a little bit later. All right. Today on the program, we have Joan Osborne. She's most notably known for her song One of Us, the song that goes, "What if God was one of us? Just a stranger on the bus." Okay. Yeah, that one. Don't take my singing. Just don't take my singing. I shouldn't have attempted. But I did, and there's no going back from me at this point. Let Joan sing it. She's the one who has the great voice and made that song famous and nominated for multiple Grammys, of course. And we had a really great chat. I really enjoyed our chat. I want to, before we get into that in just a little bit, let everyone know that Joan Osborne is going to be playing at the Livermore Valley Arts on October 4th, Friday, this coming Friday. She will be there. So tickets are available. You can get your tickets to that show if you want to see Joan in the Bay Area. And she's just a lot of fun. And she also has a new album out that came out earlier this month called Nobody Owns You, and produced by Ben Rice. We're going to talk about that a lot. Let's get into before the interview a little bit about why my face is so red. So I went out fishing with my buddy John. We went out into the marsh, took our kayaks out. Actually, both of my kayaks we took, and we did some stealthy kind of maneuvers, maybe fishing in spots maybe we weren't supposed to. It's questionable, but it was a lot of fun. I'm always down to get out anytime I can. I'm not the biggest fisherman. I don't retain a lot of knowledge about fishing also, which is a challenge for me because it's like every time I go out, it's like I'm fishing for the first time. But we did some trolling, some casting. We went out, we kayaked out about probably a little over 3 miles maybe out, and then 3 miles back. And the first 3 out was, against the current. The wind was pushing against us, and there was a lot of pressure that way. And then so one would think that on the way back it was helpful. It was a little bit helpful, but then the wind went away for a decent amount, and there's still a decent amount of work to be done when we were on our way back as well. And the whole time I was just, not the whole time, but I was envisioning just being home and showering, cleaning off because I was completely dirty, and I was imagining a nice cold beer, and sitting in front of the TV and watching the 49ers play, which they're currently playing right now on halftime as this is being recorded, and they're dominating the Patriots. They're 20-0 currently, so looking pretty good for them. But so did last week. They didn't do too well last week after they had a solid lead, but so it goes. It's all in football. But the fishing was a lot of fun. We had to paddle a lot. I just bought a new Hobie kayak, which is a kayak that you paddle with your legs instead of using an oar with your hands. And I picked that up, and we had planned to go take the Hobies out onto the bay and go for rock fishing, but the wind was just going to be too outrageous. It was not going to be safe, so we played it a little bit safer and took the my junker kayaks out into the marsh and had a great time. And my buddy John caught this big fish, his personal best, and he's a decent fisherman. He got a personal best size-wise, 32 inches, about 10 pounds, and he was just elated. He was stoked, but he wasn't done. He wanted a 20-pound fish, and he didn't want to keep it, but he just for bragging rights and for the pictures, he wanted to catch a 20-pound fish. And so we kept going, and I hadn't caught anything, and and so we go all the way out to 3 miles out, and then we let ourselves kind of drift back for about a mile, and then after a mile or so, we were paddling back while we're trolling, and then probably a mile out from where we needed to get out of the marsh, I catch onto a fish, and it was great. Like it just worked out perfectly. I'm reeling it in, and this thing is a beast, and it dragged me a little bit, dragged my kayak over to where John's kayak was, and we were right next to each other, and it went under John's kayak, and I'm reeling it in, and he grabs it out of the water and puts it into my kayak, and then trying to get the lure out of the fish's throat. It was in there pretty deep. It swallowed that thing, and so John was able to get it out by grabbing it from the gills side instead of through the mouth, and then we had that thing flopping in my kayak for a minute before I hooked it and put it outside of the kayak and dragged it for the rest of the way back. And I was just done at that point. I was happy with my one fish. It was my fish was a 33 inch fish, almost 11 pounds, really solid fish, a lot of meat on it. And so I still haven't cleaned it yet. I'm going to do that after the 49ers game is over and after we're done podcasting here. So, but it was so much fun. I'm so glad we got to have it, but I am tired. We got up early. We left just after 5 and got out there, and then we were just fishing for probably 4 or 5 hours, and paddling almost the whole time exclusively. And so my arms are tired. I just want to have more beers. I just want to relax and enjoy the rest of the day. So I'm going to go back to the 49ers game here in a few minutes, but not before we have a talk to Joan Osborne. This one was a lot of fun, I'll admit. So, Joan Osborne is one of those ones who her music's been around for a long time. There was some stuff I wanted to talk to her about, which I didn't dig into. I had about a half an hour with her, and I didn't want to push conversation about one of her song "One of Us" for too long, because there's she gets it a lot, I'm sure. But that she's done so much more musically, and she hasn't stopped making music. So I didn't want to overdo it, but I did want to talk to her about that song being a theme for Joan of Arcadia and being used in Bruce Almighty, both religious instances, of course, and that sort of thing. But we'll save it for another conversation. And also she spent some time with the dead, and we didn't get to dig into that either. She said we'll save it for next time. So let's go ahead and let's bring Joan Osborne into the program. Joan, how's your day treating you so far?
It's going good. It's going really good. I was dropping off some paintings at this club that I belong to is doing an amateur art exhibition, and I've been doing some painting in the last few years. So I went to the framers and got it all framed up and dropped those things off today. So that felt good that I accomplished something like that.
Nice. Was it like a COVID project that you started in COVID and kind of have been expanding since?
Yeah, exactly. During COVID, I was sort of stuck at home like so many people and couldn't go out on tour. And, I think emotionally that was really difficult. So I was looking for some way to kind of approximate the emotion of singing. And I took up painting, and it's been really, I like it because, most of what I do in my life is performing, and when you're done with a performance, it disappears, it no longer exists. But if you do a painting, it's an actual physical object, and it's still there when you're done with it.
Yeah, I found that over the past 20 years or so, the performances kind of start to stick around too, because everybody's got their phones, and everybody's got them out at different times, and and aren't always connected.
Right. Yeah. I haven't thought about it in that way. I've seen enough YouTube videos of myself to, to think that. But yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And the whole taping phenomenon too, that's been around since I started back in the 80s.
Oh yeah. And it used to be different though, because people used to be more connected. And I've been interviewing bands since, since shortly after high school, and it was different because like I'd go to concerts and I was able to record video and take, you know, and
Hmm.
have that moment. And sometimes I was the only one who would have video of a concert, but that's not a thing anymore. You know,
Yeah.
everybody's got some. So
Hmm.
I see it differently there. But that's a cool outlet though for you to channel your art through. Uh,
Yeah, it really has been.
yeah. So I want to start kind of early on. Tell me kind of about what music was on in your household as a kid. Were your parents influential also to you musically?
Oh, wow. Well, my parents actually met singing in a church choir. They both had beautiful singing voices. My mom is still living and she still has a lovely singing voice. And we weren't like a family that sat around and, sang songs together or played instruments together, but I loved this big console stereo that we had. And it's like a big piece of furniture with a big speaker on one side of it. And I used to take record albums. I remember we had a copy of the Sound of Music album, and I used to put that on and sit right next to the giant speaker and play the record. And as the record played, I would pick a different character to be, and I would sing along with that character's part in all the songs. And then I would get up and flip the record and do it again. And then when that was over, I would pick a different person to be, and I would sing it all through that person's character. And I think I just was happy as a clam doing that. And I think it was a little island of refuge in the middle of kind of a chaotic family experience, not in a bad way, but I'm one of six children. So there was also an awful lot of noise and activity and craziness in the house. And I think that was my sort of little safe spot to be where I could just have my little alone time.
And did any of your siblings gravitate towards music also, or was that really just your thing?
Well, we all sang in the choir in school, and for a little while, my middle brother Leo also had a band in New York City. But I guess I'm the one who's taken it the farthest for sure. I mean, we've all got nice singing voices, and we've all had that experience singing in school and things like that. But I'm the only one who's really done it as a profession for this long.
And there was a particular open mic back in the 80s that really kind of drove it for you. Tell me about that experience and what made it, you know, special to and
Yeah.
some.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Kentucky and I had moved to New York City to go to NYU film school. And I was studying documentary filmmaking mostly at NYU. And this guy who lived in the building that I was living in, this little, junky old apartment building, he invited me to go out for a drink with him. So we went out to the very first place, the very first bar on the corner, and it happened to be a blues bar. And I don't know why, but this guy dared me to go up and sing with the piano player that was playing in the club. And to this day, I have no idea why he did that, because I wasn't really singing, and I certainly, he never would have heard me sing, and I barely knew this guy. So I'm not sure why, but I took him up on his dare, and I introduced myself to the piano player, and we both figured out that we knew the Billie Holiday song "God Bless the Child," and so I sang that song um, in this bar. And when I was done, the piano player said, "Oh, that was nice. We have an open mic night here once a week. Why don't you come back again?" So there was something about the act of singing that was really, it just really kind of galvanized me. And I think that's because I had been working in this medium, the medium of film, where, to get from the idea to the finished product, it's a really long process, and it takes all this technological equipment and these teams of people and tons of money. And whereas singing, it comes out of your body and there it is. And of course you put time and energy and money and work into it if you do it seriously, but just the actual act of singing, it's a pretty natural thing. And I also loved just the emotional quality of blues music. And I felt like I was rescuing parts of myself that I had sort of been denying by singing this music. And it really, really turned my head around. So I started going to these open mic nights and finding out about other open mic nights, and slowly becoming part of this incredible music scene that was happening in New York at the time.
Yeah. And at what point did you kind of say, okay, I'm not good. Did you stop the film school? Did you fall, stop that
Yeah.
and kind of go on fully and pursue music? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I'm a college dropout. Um, and
I think you'll be
someday I'll
okay.
go back. Someday I'll go back. But yeah, I mean, at a certain point, I, I had put my own band together, and I had started playing in these clubs, and, making some money, not a ton, but at a certain point, I was playing 5 or 6 nights a week in New York City. And, I had built it up and built it up over a couple of years. And I could quit my day job. I had a receptionist job just to make money to live on, but I didn't need to do that anymore. And I thought, well, I can even live off of this. So let me see how much further I can take this. And if I don't do this now, I'll probably always wonder what would have happened. If I just go back to school and finish my degree, I'll probably always wonder what would have happened if I had pursued music. So that was when I made that choice.
Yeah. And Soul Show, I mean, tell me kind of about pulling that together. I mean, did you have a lot of support? I mean, with kind of going into that?
Yeah, Soul Show is it's the live album that we made in 1991, and I mean, it really was just because the fans that would come to our shows, and at this point we had kind of gone outside of New York and started to play in, Philly and DC and Boston and Burlington, Vermont and upstate New York, and kind of anywhere that we could get to in a day's drive. So we had become sort of this regional act, and people at the shows were like, hey, I want to buy your album, and I didn't have anything for them to buy. So I thought, well, I better get this together. And luckily there had been this sort of DIY recording movement that came out of like the punk and the hardcore scene, and bands like Minor Threat out of DC, and things like that. And so there was a bit of a blueprint for people to do this, and there was some information available, like in bookstores or libraries or whatever, or magazines. So I just did a bunch of research and figured out that I just needed to come up with a certain amount of money, and I could hire a truck to record us, and then I could take that recording and get it duplicated and all of that. And I did not have the money for it, but I was talking to a guy named Peter Honerkamp at a show that I was doing at a club out on Long Island called Stephen Talkhouse. And I was explaining to him that I really wanted to do this, and he said, I'll front you the money for that, and my partner and I will be happy to do that, and we know that you'll pay us back because we know it'll be a success. So I was really fortunate that I had kind of a little angel investor to step up and lend the money, and we did pay him back within like a year.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you had Womanly Hips, like you formed Womanly Hips before you put out your own first album, right?
Yeah, I think Womanly Hips was my maybe the publishing company, because I had started writing songs at that point, and then I just thought it was such a cool name that that became the name of my label too.
Yeah, but so I'm curious about it, like the label coming before your album. I don't know that I see that too often, where you're like, okay, I'm gonna
Oh no,
make.
I didn't. I think I didn't have a label before I had a record project of my own to put out. It was more that I had started writing some songs, and I knew that in order to copyright the songs, you needed to have a publishing company and all of that. So that's where the Womanly Hips company originated, was as a song publishing company. And then almost immediately thereafter, we recorded an album, and then it came out on the Womanly Hips label too.
Oh, okay, well, that makes more sense. So,
Yeah.
tell, tell me about working with Rick Chertoff on Relish. Like, what did he
Yeah.
bring out of you for that album? Like, and was it a natural kind of partnership?
Yeah, I mean, Rick Chertoff, he had a real successful track record, in particular with Cyndi Lauper. He had produced her big hits and had been given his own imprint at the Mercury Records. And so he, came in with a certain amount of, I guess, cachet and experience and juice. And yet he wasn't one of these like fast talking record company dudes who flatters you and whatever. And he just was very methodical and obviously really cared about music, and uh, really just was the kind of person who would say, let's take as much time as we need to build this thing from the ground up and to make it something special. And there's no rush, and let's just do whatever we have to do. And he was this very calm, methodical guiding person through the process.
Yeah. And of course, one of us came from that. But what I found really interesting was that it was originally meant for Crash Test Dummies,
Yeah.
and you were kind of around them in the circuit a lot. Like, did you ever talk to them about that song and kind of like, yeah, hey, this was kind of meant for you?
Yeah, actually, we did a show together last year, I think, and I brought this up to them and said, thanks for, or sorry about, getting that song, which was meant for you. And you know, they were very gracious about it, and they said, no, obviously that song was supposed to be yours all along, and we would have, it would not have been the same if we had recorded it, and blah blah blah. So they were very nice about it. But yeah, that when Eric Bazilian brought the song in, he said, oh, I'm going to send this to the Crash Test Dummies. And he had made a demo of it with himself singing in that very sort of low, dirgy
Yeah.
voice, like the singer of Crash Test Dummies. So I didn't recognize it as something that would be for me. And I didn't, when he said he was going to give it to them, I was like, oh, that's great. But Rick Chertoff was like, no, you're not going to give that to them. You're going to let Joan sing that song, because he thought that could be a hit song.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's cool. It's funny that you're just like, brought it up like a year ago and everything. Finally, like you're like, hey,
Yeah.
this thing way back, water under the bridge at this point, right? And yeah, they're pretty cool though. Like I interviewed him a couple years back too, and he was a cool guy, and he wanted help kind of starting a podcast and everything. So I was
Yeah.
working with him on that. So
Yeah,
um,
they're fun to hang out with for sure.
yeah, yeah. Um, Tell me about the moment when you were on the cover of Rolling Stone. Like, what was that like for you? 1996, right?
Yeah, 96. Gosh, I was never super comfortable in those kind of situations of like the glamour photo shoot with the, famous photographer. And, I never felt particularly glamorous or beautiful. And they would have these teams of people who are like, poking at your face and putting all this makeup on you and doing your hair and this squeezing you into this and that outfit, whatever. So I never loved any of that. But you know it also was an honor to be on the cover of Rolling Stone. And it was kind of surreal, actually. I was like, really, are you sure? You want me to be on? Okay, I mean, all right, I'll be there in the studio. But um it, it the thing that was funny is that when I first saw myself on the cover, it was after I had not won any of the Grammys that I had been nominated for that year. It was sort of like, wah, wah, you know. Um, but yeah, of course, it's an honor. And I mean, despite the fact that I wasn't very comfortable in that situation, I do look at the picture now and I'm like, oh, I looked pretty good. I was pretty cute.
Yeah, yeah. It's something very notable. I mean, it means you've met a certain level of success, and I mean,
Yeah.
you've done something right. So that's pretty awesome. You did an album of Bob Dylan, and so I'm really interested in like your fandom of Bob's, and kind of,
Mhm.
you ever get to meet Bob Dylan or see him live? Like, tell me a little bit about your
Oh
experience with
yeah,
him.
well, I actually have worked with him a couple of times. The first time we were in the studio and re-recording one of his sort of classic songs, Chimes of Freedom. They wanted to do it for like some sort of TV show or something. And his management called up and said he wants you for this duet. And I was like, oh, cool. Um, and and I got to the studio on the day of, and I kind of knew some of the guys in his band because he had like a New York City based band at that time. And so I was in the studio. I'd gotten there early and was chatting with those guys, and my back was to the door of the studio, but I knew instantly when Dylan walked in the room, because in this very subtle way, everyone's attention, not in an obvious way, like nobody turned around or anything, but everyone's attention immediately went to him. And it was like the weather in the room changed. And I greeted him, and I had brought him a little gift and all that. And he was very pleasant. He was very nice. And I was like, all right, he said, let's get to work. And I said, okay, where should I stand? And there was only one microphone set up. And he's like, all right, we're going to stand there. So he wanted us to be on the same microphone. So when we were recording this vocal, my lips were inches away from his. And, as people say about him, he doesn't rehearse things. He doesn't tell you what he's going to do. He just launches into it. So there I am, with Bob Dylan, like right up in my face, and trying to match his phrasing of this song, which I've just learned. And so I'm got this laser focus on his mouth and trying to match his phrasing, which I know is going to be different than the recording. And so that was the experience, was just being totally laser focused on his mouth. Where, when are these words coming? And, we did it once, and then we did it again, totally different way. And that was it. We just did it 2 times, and he was done. So in a way, it was kind of a gift to have that sort of focus, because otherwise I might have just been too nervous to be that close to him in that situation.
Yeah, that's so amazing. What an incredible, experience,
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
Yeah. Radio waves. So you found like all these old tapes and audio files and everything during
Mhm.
COVID. Is another one of your COVID projects.
Yeah.
But it's one of these things. COVID was bad on so many levels, but these are one of those things. It's just like you don't slow down unless you're forced to slow down sometimes, like in this manner, right? And so what was that like
Absolutely.
for you revisiting like all of this, this material
Mhm.
from over the years, and being like, I'm sure there's some that you're like, okay, this is great, and others that you're like critical about and everything. But tell me about that experience.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because, as you say, we're all constantly like so busy, and we've got so much to do, and we're always just trying to keep up, and like the gerbil on the wheel. And that is one of the things about COVID that I think was a positive. Obviously there was a lot terrible about it, but I think that was a positive thing, is that people sort of stepped off of that gerbil wheel and just kind of allowed themselves to take a breath. And I think, for some people it was a kind of a reprieve. For me, I think it allowed me to not only have the time, but also have kind of the perspective to look back on really my history of stuff that I had done for the decades before that, and kind of appreciate it. I would not have taken the time to do it unless I was forced to. And I think it was a way for me to kind of, um, understand a little bit more about the journey that I've taken, from somebody who just sang on a dare. Never in my life would I think that I could be a professional singer, much less, you know, Grammy nominees and million selling and traveling all the world and all that, to this place. It's a pretty remarkable journey. So I think that being forced to stay home and being able to sort through all of that gave me personally, an appreciation of that. And then also there was all this material that, um, I think at the time I may have thought was imperfect in some way, but then when you go back, you have a little bit of a different perspective on it and say, oh, well, maybe this or that little tiny thing wasn't perfect, but there's so much that's here that's so rich and that's so interesting. So I just thought, if I can't go out on the road and I can't be, with my audience in that way, maybe this is the next best thing, is to put this stuff out in the world.
Yeah, yeah, that's so cool that you were able to do that. Um, you have a new album, Nobody Owns You, that came out. Ben Rice produced it, but he's also plays
Yep.
banjo in your live band, right?
No, he
No.
just plays on the recording. He's not
Oh,
in the
on the. Oh,
yeah.
okay, okay. Well, tell me about working with Ben and how this album came out. I know it's like the most personable and kind of like you album that you've made to date, right?
Yeah, a lot of I mean, it's all new original songs and it's all lyrics that I've written, and Ben and I co-wrote a few of the songs as well. Um, but it really came about from this very tumultuous time in my personal life. I ended a 15-year romantic relationship, and my daughter left home for college, and my mother has dementia, and I'm sort of watching her diminish and disappear before my eyes. And I turned 60, which is a moment where you really take stock of your life, and so there was a lot going on, and all of that stuff made its way into the songwriting. And Ben was actually a really amazing collaborator, in the sense that he just was so, I think I might have been a little bit worried of like, does anyone care about this? And is this only something, for me, for my personal diary? And he was like, no, this is something that everybody's going to be able to relate to. And he was very encouraging and and also really fun to work with. We worked really quickly and stuff came together very quickly. And it was just a joy. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah. Um, I think you said that it's like kind of it's difficult to sing the songs live because I mean they are so personal. Do you find yourself kind of going to the place where you wrote them, like I mean to that very personal spot on stage?
I mean, some of them are. I mean, some of the songs, we've tried to work them up live, and I can't really do it.
Yeah.
um, so those will wait to do those until later. But um, when you're a performer, you kind of have to walk that fine line between being able to summon the emotions that are going to bring the song to life, but not, you know, get yourself so worked up emotionally that you can't then do your job of standing on stage in front of people and performing. So so it is always a little bit of a trade-off, but I feel like that's just part of the art of it, and I think when I am sort of swept up in emotion, the audience knows that and they are swept up right along with me, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. You mentioned your daughter going off to college, and the title track is actually about that. And um,
Hmm.
does does she listen to your music? Do you? No, no. Okay.
No,
Good for me laugh out of
no.
that one. No.
um No, I mean, I used to bring her on tour with me from the time she was 4 months old.
Yeah.
So she's been there, done that, and she's really not interested.
No,
um
over it.
yeah, and in fact, the song that you're talking about, Nobody Owns You, it was very much written for her, and I tried to play it for her in the car once, and she was like, "Oh no, mom, that's really awkward. I don't want to hear that." So, she definitely does not listen to my
You're like,
music.
I'm asking for 3.5 minutes of your time. Can you just
Nope.
putting myself out there for you, girl? Come on.
No, no.
Yeah.
Someday, someday she probably will appreciate that, but today is not that day. But that's the great thing about what I do. It doesn't just have to be about my relationship to my daughter. That song is now out there in the world for anybody who finds it useful. And I've had a lot of interesting conversations with people after the shows, talking about their own daughters and talking about their own relationships to their teenage daughters and their daughters who used to be teenagers and were, let's face it, awful to them at that point, and then have come back, and their relationship is now very different and much richer. And so it's sparked a lot of interesting talk with the fans after the show.
Yeah. Do you find that people can relate to Secret Wine in the same sort of way? I mean, and that's obviously a different relationship that you're writing and singing about ultimately.
Yeah.
But do people share, same sort of like stories of difficulties?
Yeah, I've had some conversations. That's the song that I can't do live yet, so
Yeah.
it doesn't come up as much. But yeah, I've had some conversations with people about that, and it's a hard thing to watch somebody, um, you know,
Hmm.
kind of disappear in front of your eyes, and if it's your own mother, then that's a relationship that goes to your core, and there's things about it that you don't even understand. So it's quite a ride to see that.
Yeah, yeah. One of my closest friends is going through a similar thing with his stepmom, and we
Mhm.
talk about it a lot, And I mean, he moved up to Seattle to be with his dad and stepmom and kind of just
Mhm.
support them and everything, and just how he had to, find her wandering the streets of Seattle at some point, and didn't take her, all that. I mean, it's scary and it's sad, and you just, yeah.
Yeah,
I feel for you, so I'm sorry
yeah.
you're going through that.
Well, it's so far we haven't lost her yet, but
Yeah,
but
yeah.
she but every she's the youngest of her siblings, and every one of them had dementia, and it runs in the family, so I guess I can expect to have it too if I make it that long. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully not anytime soon.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I got too
Um,
much to do to come to that just yet.
you do, and you got shows to play, and I know we're pretty tight on time, but
Mhm.
you're coming to the Bay Area, going to play Livermore on October 4th.
Yeah.
So kind of as we wind out, maybe share a positive memory you had of playing a show in the Bay Area. A venue that you like to play, or a concert that
Oh
you remember.
yeah. Gosh, I've been coming to the Bay Area for years and years and decades. I mean, I just love it. It's one of those places that I go on tour where I get off the plane or I get to the hotel or whatever, and I take a walk around, and I'm like, I could live here. I could totally live here. This would be great. I'll just move here and then I'll live here and I'll be a Californian. And so far I haven't done it, but every time I come, I think that I have that same thought. Yeah, I mean, I've played in Marin County, and when I was working with the Dead, I was up in Novato and rehearsing with them, and visiting Mickey Hart's ranch, and doing that. And I've played the Fillmore a bunch of times, and I've played the towns outside of the San Francisco proper, like Santa Cruz and places
Yeah.
like that. I love coming back there, and I guess I have enough of an audience that people continue to come out and see me when I come through town, and that's a real blessing.
Yeah, the Fillmore is my favorite place to see a show. I have so many memories there. I proposed to my kid's mom on stage there. I just
Oh
like
my gosh,
yeah, yeah,
that's great.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's incredible, the energy. You talk about energy being that close to, like, the energy of the Fillmore. The posters, you can get lost in. Even the apples suck now, but they used to have magic in the apples that you could have there, and everything. Everything, it was so great. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the last time I was on stage at the Fillmore, I did a trio song with Bonnie Raitt and Mavis Staples and me. That's the kind of thing that happens at the Fillmore.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, yeah, yeah. I've seen people who are much bigger than the Fillmore, playing there. Like one of my favorite concerts, Sammy Hagar pulled together this charity event, 15 years, I don't know, time passes, but a while ago, and with James Hetfield from Metallica, and Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day, and Pat Monahan from Train, and Joe Satriani, and and it's just like
Wow.
any of those people alone are too big for the Fillmore, but
Oh,
all playing its acoustic show, it was incredible. So yeah, but Joan, I want to thank you for taking the time and really sharing your stories, because you have so many incredible stories, and we just broke the surface. And you said the Dead, and I wanted to go on the Dead too and hear about that, but for another
next time.
time. For another time. But
Okay. Well, thank you so
uh,
much, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
absolutely. Well, you have a good evening, and
You
yeah, we'll
too.
catch out in the Bay pretty soon. Okay.
All right. I'll see you at the show, I hope.
Hopefully. Thanks,
Thanks.
Joe. That was my interview with Joan Osborne here on Concert Pipeline. And that takes us to the final segment on the program, the music news. A couple of stories to wind out the program today. Slayer has canceled their anticipated reunion at the Louder Than Life festival. One of the big four metal thrash bands' performance was canceled, and the organizers of the festival in Louisville, Kentucky, made the call to cancel the scheduled gig because of uncertain weather conditions. The second day of the 4-day event was canceled. 80 kilometer per hour winds blew in the region, along with heavy rains. There were other artists, including Anthrax and Evanescence, and that needed to cancel their performance. And yeah, I mean, it just came down to the weather, but they had to cancel. It's unfortunate. All right, and so the next story is that there's an all-star lineup that is announced for the Rock Hall induction ceremony. An eclectic list of artists will join forces to perform at the 2024 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And Slash and Sammy Hagar will be part of a star-studded group celebrating Foreigner, which is awesome. I look forward to seeing that performance. Become a fan of Foreigner over the years, as they've been on the program 3 times, and I've gotten to see them live a handful of times, thanks to one of their managers that I've worked with. And the rock icons will join pop singer Demi Lovato and Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer Chad Smith for a performance. The Mick Jones-led group will finally earn an induction after more than 20 years of eligibility, and they'll also perform several of their biggest hits during the event. So Foreigner's going to have a big old celebration. Peter Frampton, who memorably inducted Sheryl Crow at last year's event, is an inductee this year. The Who's Roger Daltrey and country star Keith Urban will perform in celebration of him. Let's see, Dua Lipa is going to honor Cher, who will also perform. Cher's going to perform. Wow, I don't think she comes out of the woods too often to perform, so it'll be interesting to see how she does. James Taylor is going to join Kenny Chesney and McAnally, I don't know who that is, in celebrating Jimmy Buffett. Julia Roberts, who starred in the music video for 2005's Dream Girl, will help induct Dave Matthews Band, while English R&B singer Ella May will perform with inductee Mary J. Blige. And Kool and the Gang, Dionne Warwick, and Ozzy Osbourne are going to take the stage. They enter the hall for the second time. He's expressed his desire to perform, though lingering health issues may not make it possible. He's been wanting to perform in England, a last show for a little bit, I know. So lots of folks that are going to be performing. It's going to be streamed live on Disney Plus. Let's see, on October 19th, and it will be on demand after that. So some cool performances to check out in the future. Kanye West announced a new album, Bully, and performed his new song, Beauty and the Beast, at China Listening Event. Is that the only place that his music is able to be played these days? Because I'm pretty sure he's not doing too well here in the States. But there's video of this. It took place at China's Wuyan River Stadium this past weekend during a listening party where he who goes by Ye, performed his new album, which arrived earlier this year and marked the second installment of the Vulture series with Ty Dolla $ign. and there's another listening event at the stadium earlier this month, and he brought his 4 children on stage to perform with him. He told the crowd, I got a new album coming out. It's called Bully, and this song is called Beauty and the Beast. And he went into the unreleased track. It's not clear when the album or the track will be released. Okay, that's about all I care about Kanye West. Oasis's 2025 reunion has announced some more dates. There are international cities that they're going to be playing. Previously, they had only announced some Europe shows, and now there are more shows, including Toronto in Canada, Chicago, New Jersey, Boston, Los Angeles here on the West Coast. So is it going to be worth making the trek to LA to see Oasis is the question. Got to see what sort of tickets I can get and how much I can get them for. I would love a good road trip. Dates are not announced as well as venues haven't been announced either, but I'm going to guess they're going to play like the Rose Bowl or something in Los Angeles. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay, let's talk about Jane's Addiction a little bit. We've been talking about them the past couple of weeks because as they've had a terrible demise through Perry Farrell's problems that he's been existing. Apparently, Taylor Hawkins, former drummer of the Foo Fighters, he played a big part in Jane's Addiction getting back together. It was his dream to see these guys do this one more time the right way. And the band recently reunited. Don't need to get into that necessarily, but it's interesting to know that Taylor Hawkins was a part of that. And Jane's Addiction's guitar tech says Perry Farrell punched Dave Navarro in the face backstage after the onstage fight and confirmed that the band is no more, while giving a detailed account of what led to the altercation. The group had recently reformed with their original lineup. Apparent tensions between band members came to a head at the gig in Boston when Farrell shoved Navarro mid-performance, and the set ended abruptly, and they canceled the remaining dates and confirmed a hiatus, citing the frontman's mental health difficulties. And now the band's guitar and bass tech of 17 years opened up about the drama. He said, I didn't think we'd get into it so quickly after it happened, but I knew eventually we'd have to address the whole Jane's Addiction Boston fiasco, which is one of the craziest things I've ever been a part of in my life. He said the show went off the rails, to say the least, and said the band is no more. Let's see here. Navarro, Pierre Daspero, what the fuck was that, you motherfucker? Before the sounds of a scuffle played out. That's Perry punching Dave, Cleary explained, and that one he actually connected with. You can hear it, the right hand to the left side of Dave's face. And the tech explained, we knew before the Boston show that it was not going to go smooth. From the get-go, Farrell is just kind of off again. So it's not a good situation. Hoping Perry Farrell goes and takes care of himself. And I mean, it shouldn't ever get to that point. Story that I'm really excited about, and I don't have an article attached to this one, but I saw it posted online. Andrew McMahon and Something Corporate, my favorite band, and my favorite musician, really. They played Denver this past weekend, and there was an advertisement on the big video screen ahead of the show. It said Something Corporate, Jack's Mannequin, Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness, Red Rocks, Summer 2025. And then during the show, Andrew McMahon confirmed the information and said that I think June 23rd, all 3 of his bands are going to be playing at Red Rocks on the same evening, which I'm so stoked for. I mean, that's so awesome for them. And I'm hoping I'll be able to go, because it would be incredible. I've seen all of his bands, love his bands. This artwork on my wall is from Everything in Transit. That's the album artwork from Everything in Transit, an album that means so much to me. And so he's going to be playing an full evening of music, it sounds like, from all three of his band lineups are going to be there. And he's going to be going deep on all of his catalogs. I mean, it's just one of those incredible things. And he's doing a cruise this November with all 3 bands that I wasn't able to go to. It's just too far across the country to do the cruise, and then the cost of the cruise itself, it was just too much. I couldn't justify it, but I might be able to justify a trip to Colorado to see all 3 of those bands. It would be just just awesome. I mean, I just love it, and I'm just so excited about something corporate being back together, and I get to see them again in 2 weeks when they come to San Francisco. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Um, Last story is that the industry responds as no new cars will be sold with CD players. This is a remarkably short-sighted move by car makers to stop fans listening to music they love, they said. It has been revealed that car manufacturers will no longer be including CD players in their new car models in the UK. That's interesting. Is it just the UK? I don't know. But CD sales, according to data from the Digital Entertainment Retail Association, CD sales saw a year-on-year increase of 3.2% in the first half of 2024, meaning that not everyone is happy for the demise of the in-car CD player. Look, come on. I mean, that was, I guess, in the UK adult population that those numbers are increasing. But we all should be able to stream at this point, right? Like, let's just all get Apple Music or Spotify or streaming service. It's just the way of the present. I wanted to say the future, but it's really the way of the present and the future. I don't know that it's going to be going back to CDs, but apparently there are 172,000 CDs sold in the UK this year of Taylor Swift's latest album, The Tortured Poets Department. It's more than the three biggest selling cars in the UK last year combined. So I don't know. Who knows what's going on? It is what it is. Just, sometimes you've got to move forward. But I still have a DVD player, and once in a while I'll pull out a DVD when I want to watch something that I don't have on streaming. So I get it. Okay, that is our show for today. Thank you for tuning in. Next time on the program, we will have ZZ Ward having a fun interview with ZZ, and we're going to be sharing that next week on Concert Pipeline. So for all of us here at Concert Pipeline, I'm Steve Jones. We'll catch you next time.